Oh, you damn right. It's time for another edition of House Divided. Glad to be with you. There was a power outage in this house very early on this morning, but we're past that. Keep your fingers crossed that weather doesn't affect the show today. Our man Jeff Ketchum is off, getting a little vacation time in, although it's Jeff Ketchum. He's also working to cover the pool party for you. So we'll get to all of that. I'm Chad Hastings, and that guy right there is Cody Carpentier, nice enough to jump in for Catch today. Cody, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. From the chat to the screen, I always love doing that, jumping right up out of here. But I one question though, because I'm in South Carolina, it's extremely humid here. My fire alarm just went off because it's so humid outside. I opened the door for 5 minutes. But you guys, I'm in, obviously we're in the chat behind the scenes, and it's like my power's out, my power's out, my power's out. Everybody's in here having power issues. It rains every single day here in South Carolina. And knock on wood, I have had zero power problems. I want to know what is the deal, because all you guys have internet issues or power problems. Is that just the Texas power structure is still that, we heard about it when the ice came a couple years ago.
I know it was, all my life I've heard nothing but bragging about the Texas power grid because we got one to ourselves. Like we have one that's devoted just to us. And then the last couple of years, there have been little things that seem to come up. But yeah, that when that hurricane went through, the tropical storm comes through in terms of catches stuff. It went through, and then it felt like every storm that happened, they had another big storm the other day that was just a lot of rain, and that seemed to mess up a lot of folks. I honestly don't know what mine was this morning. They informed us at about like 5 o'clock that it was out, and then about 5:30 it was back. So mine was not crazy. It may have been an hour, but it was certainly nothing like Catch is dealing with. So hope everybody's doing well today. We got hook 'em emojis already from JP via 13. Jefferson's throwing the you damn right back at me. Jared is in here as well. Sonny pointing out, yes, Chad and Cody. That's right. The Chad and Cody show. It's basically what happens if you really, really take care of your hair and really focus on the follicle, or you just say, you know what? Boom, we're just going all the way down. We're going all the way down. Both sides.
But it's funny because, like, I've told Alex this multiple times. I've probably said it multiple times in multiple shows. But between the age of, I think it was like 4th or 5th grade, and the year I got out of college, so I don't know what that is, 10 to 22. I was exactly like you are. I would go home, and when I needed a haircut, I'd use nothing, straight down, bick it, and I'd be borderline bald. I wasn't quite bald, but I had just stubbles, right? And one day, sitting there, I was actually with a couple friends, went to the Virginia Tech football game, and one of my buddies goes, "Why don't you just grow your hair out? You work from home. You don't do anything. Nobody's going to see you. Just grow it out." And I was like, sure. And then I just grew it out, and I found out I had hair. I literally have never had hair until just a couple of years ago. So I could join you one day. Though I've thought about it. I've tempted my wife. I go, I'm going to go in the bathroom, and I'm not going to come back. And she's like, don't you dare.
Cody, it's so easy, and it's so addictive too. I've been saying it ever since I did this in 2011. In fact, the last year Texas and Texas A&M played football is the year that I did this the first time. And once my wife agreed to it long term, I don't think I'm ever doing anything else. And if I could go back in time, even though I know people would have made fun of me in school, whatever it was, but they made fun of me anyway, I would have done this at like age 13 if I could just go back in time. Who cares?
Dude, that's like, there was that 13 years. So, I mean, you're talking about like $6,000 in haircuts.
Right. Oh, I was paying, even me, I wasn't a fancy haircut guy, but I was probably paying, what was I doing? I know I was laying down 25 with a tip every time, for sure.
When's the last time you got a haircut though? When's the last time you went into a barber and found out how much it was? Because I get literally just a fade clean. Yeah. They don't touch the top. It's $50 just to get zing cleaned up. Like this ain't no $8 great clips like it used to be when I was, 3rd grade, but
I know. Yeah, there you go. Saving all that money. Good to see you, Sonny, jumping in. Also, Money B in the building today. And Christopher just has an idea that maybe everybody needs to get a generator. Could work. work for everybody. We hope everybody's having a good day. It is pool party day for Texas. Now, where I am out east of Austin between Manor and Elgin, I am now, as I'm speaking, I'm seeing a little sunshine. You might be able to see it coming in this east facing window. And I'm seeing some sunshine, Cody. Earlier today, it rained a little bit out here. There's rain possibilities throughout the day. So it might be one of those weird days where you get the pool party, but you might have some rain in the pool. You might have to duck into, covered areas. I'm guessing wherever they have this Texas pool party, there'll be cover. I don't think they're having it out in the middle of nowhere.
Do we think this is a pool party where, they brought this question up? I think you might have brought it up yesterday, I believe, to Anwar, or maybe Anwar brought it up to Alex this morning. But do you think this is a pool party where these kids are actually swimming? Or do you think this is more of we're sitting around the pool eating barbecue? Because I've seen like Alabama's got like a barbecue. They don't have the word pool. It's like the Champions barbecue or something like that. And everyone else is having barbecues and get-togethers and stuff. Do you think the pool party aspect of it, like, do we really think these kids are swimming? And like,
I think some of them, yeah. I think that it just depends on the kid. It's going to depend on the kid because there are going to be some kids that have a specialty that involves a pool and they want to show off a little bit. There's going to be a cannonball expert. Yeah. There's probably a belly flop expert. Somebody might have a good can opener they want to show off. Or it could be like, man, I can backstroke. The Olympics are coming up. Oh, no, you can't do the breaststroke? I can do the breaststroke. Watch this. There'll be a little bit of that, and then I think they'll probably mix in a barbecue as well.
Little competition, like down and back. Also, the aspect of having a quarterback there, Diabell, and maybe a couple of receivers. Maybe you got a couple routes coming off the concrete, diving into the pool, catching the pool. That might be. Yeah. You might have to sign. You have to sign a little protection letter there. But
yeah. Since you mentioned the name, and maybe my favorite name of this group today, Dia Bell, Raja Bell's kid that is a signee in this class. Let's throw the list up for you. We will do this a few times today. Shout out to our man Tyler and the crew in the graphics department at OB for putting this together. But here's the list of folks that are showing up today as we know it at this point. And again, we're, taping here around 12. If you're watching us live in the 12 o'clock hour, if you're watching it later, this is the way it was as of the afternoon. And if you can see the distinction there are 5 guys on this list that are already not signees, already verbal commits. Everybody is 2025 except Chris Stewart. If you see that name, that's a wide receiver from Shadow Creek, the Pearland area. Chris is a 26 guy, if I'm not mistaken. And then you've got a mixture of, class of 25 and class of 26 on this list. Cody, as you look at this list, we've been talking about different guys this week. What jumps out to you? Where's your focus today as we actually get to the day? What's the thing that jumps out to you?
Well, I think the one thing that definitely jumps out is, first off, obviously Michael Fasusi's not there. Because that's been the main target, the main name that's been conversed, and Ketch will tell you it's the top name on the list. But then just seeing the 2025 group, Smith Orogbo, interesting he's coming, being that he's committed already. Maybe he just wanted to vibe it out and see the coaches and stuff. But Michael Terry and Jonah Williams being the 2 2025 guys tells me that this is the focus. Like these are the 2 guys that they are apex focused on. The Jonah Williams thing has come of late. Obviously, it felt like he was going to Texas A&M, but getting him on campus, I think, is a big thing. You brought it up yesterday, trying to get that official visit in. I'm working on actually an article or a little column based around what you brought up yesterday, being like a lot of these guys really don't commit unless they've taken an official, and the hit rate for that is like, I think it's right up over 90%. I'm going to have that up tomorrow on orangebloods.com. But and then look at the 2026 class. It's nice to have a defensive lineman brought up in there, and Tiki Hola. And then they're already looking at the receivers for next year, and Jordan Clay and Mike Brown, like just kind of getting ahead and staying tapped in. And Anwar brought it up this morning that Mike Brown is a guy that doesn't have any stars right there, and people might just brush that one off. But he was in early June to both Texas and Ohio State, and he also took an official visit to Texas A&M. But Texas and Ohio State both offered him on those visits. And if Ohio State's offering somebody that you're also in, and they're from the state of Texas, they got to be half decent.
Yeah, that's true. And in terms of the teams to start with, we know Oregon has been making a move, but Ohio State is always there as well. And you were talking about Williams and Terry; those have been the guys we've kind of been focused on. I know this week because they are big, not only big names, but they could give Texas some of that momentum we've been talking about that they've just haven't been able to grab. And to your point about Jonah Williams. You were the one that pointed out to us yesterday in the chat that he'd been here multiple times for an unofficial visit. So this kind of adds to the mystery here for me, Cody. I mentioned yesterday the places that he's been to some big dog official visits. USC and A&M and LSU and Ohio State, and there's another one I'm forgetting. But not Texas. Yet he's been here a handful of times. He's been to Austin. What is it about Texas that Jonah Williams doesn't want to just go ahead and schedule that? He's looking at all these big names. Cody, I don't understand. Why not just say, all right, let's get it an official visit. Let me get the full treatment at all these places so I can really make a balanced decision.
I think that exactly what you just laid out is kind of a personal thing. Like it just kind of happens to be how it works sometimes. Like I said, I'm looking back at the last couple classes that have all been under Sark, and there's a couple, not very many, like 2 or 3 guys that have committed that have either been in on one visit or none official visit or unofficial visits. Sorry, over the course of the last 4 years, and it's like that happens. But then you also have guys like Jonah Williams, and there's many others that have taken 3, 4, 5 unofficials, and they might not commit. And then you bring up the official thing as well. Like I think it's just all player dependent. And with Jonah, it feels like the reason that maybe the official didn't happen was because at that time, obviously the baseball thing is a big proponent in him, and Schlossnagle was at A&M, and then that was probably when he was planning his officials, and then bang, officials are over with. Schlossnagle's now Texas. All right, cool. I got to go back to Texas. I got to get back. I think he was at Texas 3 times in 2023. He was there in Austin in June, like early June or maybe late May. I can't remember exactly what the date was on that ticket. And then he'll be back today. So that'll be 5 unofficial visits. So it's like, it matters, of course, getting that official, but 5 unofficials is, I mean, how do you equate that? I don't know.
Yeah, especially when you consider just if there was a relationship with Schloss before, then he's at Texas now. Why wouldn't that be? I don't know. Michael throws in a chat here on Williams. I think Texas was behind the curve in the spring because A, he didn't like David Pierce, and B, Texas initially wanted to recruit him as a linebacker, but both of those things have changed. Yes, Michael, exactly. And like we talked about this week, if there's one guy that you're going to focus in on, let's make sure he enjoys the pool party, whatever that means, the pool, the barbecue, the atmosphere, whatever you've got organized there. But if he wants to have a serious talk, if he wants to really dig in a little, hey, is Coach Nansen around here anywhere? No, but we'll put you on the phone with him right now. You can FaceTime with him. Hang on one sec. To me, Cody, you get into some of that X's and O's stuff if you can get him to understand that you see him as a badass safety and that your new baseball coach is somebody he knows. And then, get to the next logical process of, hey, man, you need to come do an official visit here because we can get you, we'll look at everything. We'll look at football. We'll look at the defensive side there, and we'll get you over to the dish to hang with Schloss a little bit.
I think so. That's the big thing. Obviously is the change of Pierce to Schlossnagle, and the linebacker safety thing. I mean, that'll can itself out when it happens. I mean, we saw Ty Anthony Smith come in and gain 23 pounds or 28 pounds over the course of his first 3 months on campus. And he's a guy that's 195 now, 220 or so. And he's kind of a tweener in that safety linebacker kind of room. And now he's officially probably going to be a linebacker because he's got that weight up. The thing with Jonah Williams is he's just a menace of an athlete. And it's like at 6'3", 205, you get to a point where this guy maybe puts 20 pounds on, and maybe it's a natural 20 pounds, 6'3", 225, you're either Cam Chancellor or you're moving to linebacker, or you're Mark Barron, you're moving to linebacker and you're going to put 10 more. Like those things will naturally come to head. Whether he wants to play safety or linebacker, I think they can convince him all they want that he's going to play safety. But if he puts that weight on, he can't keep it off. as you do in college. You could see him move to linebacker, or it doesn't really matter. He could play. Isaiah Simmons was one that played a lot of safety, linebacker, edge. He could literally play all three levels. Jonah Williams is that type of guy. He can play, the Tyron Matt. He just an athlete. He can play all three of those tiers. So the positional thing, I'm not as much worried about. I get where he could definitely come from, being like, I don't want to play linebacker. It's like you're gonna have a tough option here in maybe 2 years. If you put 20 pounds on, you're not going to really fit in that safety room.
Yeah, that's a good point. Somebody else bringing up the point, Drew, reminding us that yes, Dia Bell is a class of 26 guy. You were talking about guys that have already committed showing up. Cody, these guys are interesting to me too because of how much talk there is about culture around this team. And it just feels like that's a culture building thing. I don't think KJ Lacey is going to be in, although it was reported that he was at one point. Maybe his plans have changed a little bit, but they were going to have both quarterbacks from the 26 class in. And to me, that cannot hurt. That cannot hurt to at least have one of those guys there. That means you're going to have Dia Bell, Nick Townsend, the tight end that's coming in. And Nick he's 25, class of 25, I think.
Yep.
And then you've got Stewart, the receiver from the 26 class that we talked about earlier coming in. So to me, the more, groups of skill guys you can get together like that, getting to know each other, learn about each other on a personal level if they want and just chill out. I think that's good. And if I'm a fan, I like to see that you've got a group, small group, 5 guys in this case, of guys that are committed, because they will be able to discuss that commitment with the guys while everybody's having a great time. I get it. But in part of that discussion is going to be, hey, here's why I decided to commit to Texas, and it couldn't hurt with those other guys.
That's 100% a big part. And having, if you were to have those both quarterbacks there, and Lacey, I believe, was at the 2023 pool party, so that could potentially work into be like, maybe he liked it. Maybe he committed afterwards. So whatever, he must have liked it. But maybe he's like, I don't have to go back to town for that. But it would have been, as a culture thing, nice to just be like, yo, there's quarterback 1 and there's quarterback 2 for the next couple of years, obviously after Arch. And then you also have, Bo Barnes, like you said, Smith Orogbo, Townsend, Chris Stewart. Like, there's a handful of commits here mixed in with targets at those specific positions. Like you mentioned, Chris Stewart. There's other receivers in that room like Michael Terry, Mike Brown that they're trying to commit, Jordan Clay that they're trying to recruit, and then the defensive side of the football. Like, I think there's great correlation in how they built this thing out as far as who's attending and that's committed and who's not. But definitely, I think the quarterback thing would have been a nice dynamic to have both there.
The other thing I like, we've talked about Michael Terry this week, the talented wide receiver, or maybe tight end if you think he's that, out of Alamo Heights. He's in, and Townsend's going to be there too. So we know these guys are talking to each other for a lot of different reasons now, Cody. One of them is, if you're talking to a guy who's already there and signed, you might ask, hey, what's your NIL situation? What's that? What's this like? What's that like? But in terms of X's and O's, Michael Terry has been he's been told different things from different teams in terms of how they want to use him. But now he and Nick Townsend, if they want to, they could kind of, go up to the side, sit down by the pool, and really talk about, hey, what are they telling you? Do they see you as a tight end? Do they see you as a receiver? Like, let's walk through all that. Those guys are right at that level, Cody. And I wanted you to tell me what you think when you watch that film, because I know you watch a ton of film on guys like this. But like, when you see them, do you immediately think tight end, or do you just think freaky, versatile wide receiver? Like, how do you look at those guys?
This is funny because we talked about this literally a week ago when we were in Dallas, as it was like our opening conversation. The first morning we get there, we're sitting at breakfast and Townsend comes up right away, and Alex pulls the film up, and it's like directly right into football. And of course, we don't really have a perfect view, and not talking to the coach, but hey, coach, what's your plan with this guy? You can just take what you can project. And when you see what the team has right now in form of commitments, in form of targets, in form of current rostered players, having Amari Winston, who some have ankled, including Jason, like, man, he doesn't feel like he's a hard commit at this point. Nick Townsend, of course, on the roster, or of course on the commitment list. And then you bring in Michael Terry. And it's 3 odd ones because Amari Winston pretty clear-cut tight end. Nick Townsend, the edge thing. I think Nick Townsend fits best as an edge. He's 6'3", 225. Ketch told me, he's like, I don't like how that translates to the future of him being a successful defensive end in college. He's a little light. I will combat that with saying Colin Simmons is around that 235 range. He's 6'3" as well. I know Colin Simmons is a freak, but you turn that tape on with Nick Townsend, he's a ball player on both sides of the football and a guy that I would love to see in the program for a year and a half, 2 years, and then get vaulted up into a position to play next to or behind Colin Simmons for sure. Michael Terry, on the other hand, you guys talked about it yesterday with Anwar. There's no receivers on this roster that are over 210 pounds. Ryan Wingo's 210 pounds. The next biggest is Ryan Livingston, who's 195 pounds. He's 6'4", 195 pounds. And this is a different dynamic feel with Terry of being 6'3", 215, to where I think he does translate to the tight end position. He does fit the Jatavian Sanders mold. He could put 20 pounds on, and we've seen this entire new arc of tight ends that have translated through college into the NFL, whether it's Dalton Kincaid at 239 pounds, whether it's Sam Laporta. I mean, you can keep on going. There's like 7 or 8 tight ends right now that have gone from college to the NFL around that 235 to 245 pound range and been successful. And that's something Michael Terry, from an athlete standpoint, from a talent standpoint, the tight end position could take advantage of and use as leverage, falling right in the footsteps of Jatavian Sanders, playing with a guy like Amari Niblack, who's already on the roster. For me, Terry translates to a tight end. Townsend translates to an edge. You have Winston on the commitment list already at tight end. Like, it makes sense in my head, but then on the paper, you're looking at tight end, tight end, tight end. It's like, how do you sell all 3 of these guys on coming to town? So there either has to be a conversation that's had from the coaching staff and the players, and they each know exactly what the roles are, and it's exactly like I laid out. Or maybe it's Terry's a receiver, Townsend's a tight end, and this is all moot.
Yeah, and maybe that conversation happens poolside, at least with Townsend and Terry today, since they are both going to be at the pool party. And we hope, again, the weather will hold up for that pool party. Thanks to everybody who's jumped in the Specs chat. We do see your super chat, Jay. We will get to that. Let's give one of our sponsors a little love, and it is AV Consultations. You're going to see the great pictures. You're going to hear from Tom. The second frame is the furniture that I want. You find something you want. Here we go.
Hi, this is Tom McKay with Audiovisual Consultations. Today's home electronics can be a bit daunting. My company has spent the last 36 years making sure they are not. For those of you who have not experienced our services yet, we'd like to invite you to give us a try for all your home electronics needs. We carry all the major brands of televisions and stereo equipment at prices you can't find in stores. And we come to you. There's no need to leave your home to find great pricing and incomparable service. No traffic, inexperienced sales geeks, or pushy showroom tactics. We believe in having some fun and dreaming big. You have a dream for your home entertainment? Let us know. We can make it come true. And we are always there to help after the job is done. We cultivate clients for a lifetime by treating everyone like their family. No, not those family members. I'm talking about the ones you actually like. So relax, hug your kids, make love to your wife, and smile. Then, when you have a moment, give us a call at 255-8678. That's 512-255-8678. Or online at avconsultations.com.
Rolling through a house divided on a Thursday. Pool party Thursday for the Longhorns. Jeff Ketchum off, trying to take a little time off, even though he's working behind the scenes. He's working at orangebloods.com. Our man Cody Carpentier stepping in. We have a little news for you coming up that involves Cody Carpentier. Before we get to that, Jay, one of our favorite super chatters, threw $5 into the jar. Thank you, Jay. Sorry, but Lacey doesn't do anything for me at all. Not impressed by him and convinced he will eventually transfer anyways. Bell will beat Lacey out. Cody, Jay could just be a Spurs fan. Maybe he's an NBA guy, and he just loved him some Rajah Bell back in the day, and he thinks his kid's going to be great. But there's at least one opinion that they think it's going to be Dia Bell. If it's one of those two, after Arch, like you were talking about, Jay thinks it's going to be Bell.
I agree with Jay. I think Lacey's a very good talent. I don't love the size. Like, it kind of fits into the Bryce Young mold, but both these guys are pretty slim and fit that mold. And that's something that Sark had recruited before he was in on that Bryce Young recruitment. Ehi, I think that's how you say it in the chat, also made a good point about Keelan Russell. That's one person I did see in person. I wish I would have saw KJ Lacey in person down there in Jacksonville, but he opted out to go to a 7-on-7. But Keelan Russell is mighty impressive. I will just put it that way, and should be one of the top 3 or 4 ranked quarterbacks in the class. But as far as like what Texas has in Lacey and Diabell and Arch Manning, and of course, everyone always wants to forget about Trey Owens in that list of 3 to make it 4. It is interesting to just think through, and this has been a conversation that's been had before and will continue to be had for the next 4 years, is what's the timeline look like for all these guys? A lot of people thought Quinn was going to stay for 2 years and dip, right? He stays for 3. A lot of people think Arch is going to stay and play for 2 more years. Like he's going to play in 25, he's going to play in 26. What if he only plays in 25? Does that mean that a second year KJ Lacey is the starter? Does that mean that a third year Trey Owens is the starter? And then that means that Lacey kind of gets in this weird spot where Diabell's next in line. I don't know. I would say head up. If these guys were in the same class, I would agree with Jay. Diabell would beat out Lacey as far as the rankings would go in the same class personally.
I know you got to have these guys be excited about playing as soon as possible, but Cody, I would be honest with them in terms of math. I would set them with the expectation that Arch Manning's not waiting around all that time to play a year and leave. That's got to be 2. Like it's
okay. So you're on Arch's playing 2. Okay.
That to me, that's just the logical way. That's how I would logically look at it. If you're going to be that patient to build things up, and you're a part of that family, and college football means that much to you, you really want 1 year of it as a starter and then you're gone?
But this is where it comes in. Like, this is where the conversation builds from, is the Quinn Ewers thing. And this is what I was like talking to Alex about. I remember last year on multiple shows on Football with Friends, it was like, he's like, Quinn is leaving. Quinn is leaving. And it was like, it doesn't trend. Like he hasn't been as successful as I think he wanted to be. He wants to win a national championship, right? He wants to hit these thresholds, I'm sure, to help himself get drafted as high as possible. Now, fast forward in hindsight, we did talk to some people over the course of the last month that told us Quinn probably would have got drafted top 20, but that's hindsight, right? Quinn, and this was Alex's point, is Quinn and his family always wanted to be gone after 2 years, which would have been, like I said, after the 2023 season. Arch and their family want him to sit and then wanted him to play. But in that math that maybe was conversed at one point, right? And Ketch has said this before. He's like, their family has a plan. Their plan was to sit behind Quinn and then play. But if you put these 2 stories together, Quinn was supposed to do what? Play for 2 years and leave, which means Arch would have sat for 1 season behind him and been given the reins this year, year 1, next year, year 2. But Quinn stays another year. Does that mean Arch sits for 2, plays for 1? That math still equates to 3 years, right?
Right.
For me, in my brain, that makes sense, where Arch plays for 1 season. Arch is going to be good. Let's just put it that way. Arch is going to be good. Unless something goes wrong, Arch is going to be really good. And you have to project that that's likely going to mean he's going to get a lot of top 10 conversations after 1 season at Texas.
So you're thinking of Arch as a 3-year journey, where at the end of a 3-year journey, he is getting that NFL attention, whether he wants it or not.
He's going to get it. I don't think it's going to be like the Bronny James thing where it's like, oh, he's just going to, no, like this is well-deserved NFL conversation, where if he has 1 year, let's just put random numbers on it. This team goes 11-1, college football playoff, they win a couple games, whether they go to the Natty, lose it, win it, doesn't matter. 40 touchdowns, 4,000 yards. You can't tell me like people aren't going number 1 overall, number 3 overall, like he's a top 2 conference. And at that point, if you're the Mannings and you're content, or not content, but you're very happy with what the product is, sitting for 2 years with Sark and Quinn, and then playing that 1 year and going bonkers, like what more do we need to do to come back? If we are convinced he's in a good enough spot, which based on what we saw in the spring game, based on what we've heard so far, like, and again, the math is what everyone talks about. The math is he's going to play for 2 years, but that coincided with Quinn only playing last year, not this year.
Right. That's interesting.
Listening and reading through the grapevines of like what people say, right? So,
And it brings us back to Diabell, who, sitting by the pool today, if he asks the question of whoever's around, right? If it's Sark or Milwee or whatever, and if he, asks one of those coaches or a player or whatever, like, hey, you guys just give me an update. Is Arch still thinking blank? Whatever that is. Might be an interesting, that'd be an interesting fly on the wall moment, or a fly on the floaty in the pool moment to figure out what's being said.
The thing is if that is the way it happens, if Arch is only there for 1 year, it opens the door for this to be successful, this train of thought, which is Lacey's going to be in next year, sit behind Arch for a year, play. Bell will be in, sit for a year, and play. If Arch stays for 2 seasons, it's going to throw this whole thing off kilter, and it also completely shuts out Trey Owens. So there's got to be a plan behind there, whether they think one of these guys might opt out, or they're like, you know what, the cream's going to rise to the top, one of these guys into the portal, whatever it is. There's a plan behind the scenes, I would assume, with Sark and Milwee, but it is definitely an interesting thing that for me personally, and I've talked to Alex about it a lot, and I've heard Ketch and you talk about it, but the Arch and Quinn math to me has always just added up different than other conversations I've heard.
Yeah, we got Chad jumping in here saying the Mannings don't ever seem to be in a hurry. Chad, I would agree with you, but it is interesting the timeline that Cody's pointing out, and the fact that things did change with Quinn's plans. If you have any chats for us, throw them in there. If you give us a super chat, it'll go right to the top of the list. Brad, shout out to you. A&M Pool Party has been renamed the Bushwood Caddy Day. Brad, it's a little preview. Well done. We got buy or sell coming up, and there may be something along those lines in my buy or sell today for Cody. Also, we are going to get into a little bit of the future of college football, because apparently there's an update on the scholarship situation. Before we do that, let's hear from Specs and Lisa, and then we'll talk about it. Are those scholarship numbers going up above 100? Stay with us.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
Yes, indeed. By the way, shout out to a beer company that I like a lot, and I just got a 6-pack of it at Specs. The Real Ale folks, who just do an incredible job of all kinds of stuff, Fireman's 4 and everything that they do out there. I'm not sure if I've ever had a Real Ale that I didn't like, but I've just recently had a hazy IPA they do called Crash Pad. It's pretty damn good. It's like a 9%, so be careful with it. But Crash Pad from Real Ale, big thumbs up. It's really good. All right, Cody. So I saw this note from Ketch, in fact, today, and that maybe where both of us saw the kind of an update on it. It's been talked about. What is the new scholarship deal going to be when all this revenue stuff is figured out, when everything comes off of the lawsuits and we get kind of the new structure of college football? There's been talk about scholarships basically going away. Scholarship limitations, ultimately, like the caps that we all know, would go away, and they kind of reset the number. And apparently they've talked about it this week, and they do like the number 105. Yeah. So for everybody that's been thinking of an 85 scholarship world, think of it this way. The 85 just goes away. That limit goes away, and you are allowed. Now, you don't have to. That's the other thing here. You can do as many scholarships as you want, or I guess theoretically you can do as few as you want. But Cody, they're going to allow all the way up to 105 scholarships in football. We'll talk about some other sports in a second, but your gut reaction when you hear 105 scholarships, this would be starting in the 2025, 25-26 cycle. What is your first reaction when you hear it?
I think my first reaction would be 2 things. One, awesome, because more kids that are grinding to make the roster are going to now get their school paid for. You always love seeing those stories come out. I do anyway, of the ones that come out and it's like, Eastern Michigan, and it's like the 85th scholarship, and the one guy gives up his scholarship so this other guy can stay on the team because he can't afford it, things of that nature. That's cool that more kids in those situations are going to get scholarships. I think that's probably the best part. The second part would be more towards the NIL thing, which is there's going to be a little more focus on the higher end players, I would believe. I don't know. That's kind of like where my brain initially went, was like, okay, so if the back end of the players are going to be taken care of, you're going to get more players on scholarship. The top end schools should get a little bit stronger, because they can go out and, instead of worrying about just like grabbing a walk on and being like, hey, get on the roster, now you can potentially add a couple more players for depth through the portal that, leave in Eastern Michigan or leave Western Kentucky. Guys that are juniors and seniors, right? Give them a scholarship, bring them on, adds depth. Whereas then you don't have to use NIL on those guys. Instead, you can focus that more towards the top end guys. That's kind of where my mind went. Maybe I'm completely out of pocket on the NIL thought of that mattering, but I think what it does for sure is helps these top end schools continue to build depth and pull apart from the G5 schools. Like, I heard that as a thing today on one of the national radio shows, was you could potentially see some smaller schools thinking about, man, it's going to make it even harder for us to compete, because these bigger schools are now getting, I don't know what you got. Say you got 60 big dogs and they each get 20 more scholarships. That's 120 players that now you're hypothetically able to just yank from a whatever, Cal Poly, Western Kentucky, like I said, Charleston Southern, and one kid from each school, bang. And it's like the best, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that helps in depth with the talent and the depth of each one of these schools.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, especially the older fans that remember this era, and this is even before my time of being a football fan, of remembering, I always think of Darrell Royal for some reason, because Texas was one of those schools that, man, they could stockpile players, and they were kind of keeping them from other teams in addition to having them for themselves if they wanted. A lot of people think of that, Cody. I think this one may feel a little different, because when you have transfer portal and you have NIL, these players have mobility now. And just because they're there, I don't think you can hide them as easily. Here's a couple things to clarify that I think we're going to need to watch moving forward. One, let's keep remembering the specifics are not out there yet, but what I'm reading today says that the 105, they may decide that you only have to get to 105 by game 1, start of the season. What if in spring football and in summer workouts right now, and even in fall practice, you could have more than 105. You could have 105 scholarships. You could theoretically have other players involved. They could be walk-ons. They could be scholarship. We'll get to that in a second. But then you have to cut back, like cut day in the NFL. NFL used to have, 3, 4, 5 different cuts. Now they've gotten it down to, I think, one or two, and it goes from about 90 to 53 like that. But I think that may be where we're headed as well. Almost an NFL feel where you're going to have guys helping you through summer, helping you into the fall. And then, to your point about maybe the Coastal Carolinas of the world, or Tulane or Memphis or whatever, could those kind of guys be somebody that those schools look at and they kind of get, I don't know, recycled in the sport a little bit because they've gotten a little action, helping out the big dog program? I don't know.
That's an interesting point. It does feel like everything is somewhat, everything we heard last week at the SEC media days, and kind of a lot of the notions that the NCAA or college football in general has made, has been more towards like aligning itself with some of the strategies that the NFL uses. So the idea of more of a hard roster cap, like you said, for week 1, and being able to kind of be flexible in the off season. You can, in fantasy, it's the same way. Fantasy football, you have to have a hard cap for your rosters, but in the off season and dynasty, generally you get this free for all thing. That could definitely be a viewpoint where you can bring in, they're like no cap on how many, walk-ons or how many players you have try out and go through the summer camp with you. And that could definitely create a different leverage, especially for, players in Texas that,
Yeah. It's an interesting chat here from Vivek, and this is kind of the point we were talking about with modern college football. Don't see how we would utilize 105 scholarships effectively. Players won't want to be fifth or sixth string. The end of the roster won't really be that helpful? Question mark. Vivek, interesting point.
I kind of disagree with that because, like I said a minute ago, like you're going to be pulling. It's not that those guys from Charleston Southern or Western Kentucky and wherever are going to be player number 100, 101, 102. That player might be player 50, right? As far as talent level goes. And that back end, 85 to 105, is still going to be the walk-on-esque players. They're just now going to be under scholarship. So all it does is bumps up. It allows these guys to now get their school paid for, but then it bumps up the ability to create more depth and steal from these other schools. In reality, that's kind of where my mind goes with that.
Here's something else to keep in mind, Cody, and for everybody watching today, keep this in mind, especially if you know other sports. The other thing that this report I'm reading today says is baseball, softball, and volleyball all would go up in scholarship numbers. Baseball fans, get ready. You know what number I'm about to say. It used to be, and is right now, 11.7 because of partial scholarships. It's going to 34 theoretically. So let's just even it out, round the number up. You're talking about going up 22 scholarships just in baseball. Softball would go from 12 to 25. Volleyball would go from 12 to 18 under this plan. So, Cody, that's going to be something to as we keep that in mind. Here's the other part. If I'm reading correctly, they're saying moving forward, all sports, all of them are going to be equivalency sports, meaning partial scholarships are allowed. So I'm going to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying. Until right now, as we are sitting here doing the show, football and basketball players, they are one scholarship to one person. That's how they have to do it. I think it's called a head count, the head count sports. Now, everything is going to be like baseball to where you could give out a little bit. So, Cody, back to your point about those guys, 85 to 105. We may think of them not just as an 85 to 105 as in 20 full scholarships. It might not be. What if 85 to 105 is 20 guys, but what if they spread 10 scholarships among 20 guys and they take the rest of that money and maybe they don't spend it at all on scholarships, or maybe they spend it on guys further up the roster. Maybe it gets, spread out a little differently. They're going to have that flexibility if this goes through. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. All these numbers are going up, and the estimate I read is that each school will be paying $3 to $7 million more in scholarships each year. Think of that for a second.
Wow. Did you see the part about this in the Title IX compliance about what sounds like needing to add a woman's sport? There's going to be, sounds like by the write-up that there's going to be 44 extra women's scholarships somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And to quantify that with Title IX, they have to essentially potentially add a or multiple women's sports.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too, because that's where the math is going to get real weird with football people. For years, football fans have said, why can't you separate that discussion? Why can't you take the football and just make it a separate issue and then balance out all the other sports that are men's sports, women's sports? But that's not how they do it. So, like by my math, if you add 20 in football and 22 in baseball is what we just talked about. Yeah. So that's 42 that you're adding on the men's side. And I told you softball's going 12 to 25, volleyball 12 to 18. That's 19 that you're adding on the women's side. Well, just off of those numbers, Cody, we got an extra 23. Yep. So that's 23 extra scholarships that you're going to have to deal with on the women's side. And then to your point, are you creating You're just, which sports do you add scholarships to? Or like you said, is it creation of different sports, new sports? All that stuff is going to have to be figured out as well. So they're seriously discussing this week. Nothing is set in stone. Here's the other thing that's not set in stone, Cody. And this, for Texas fans, this is going to be where you as Texas fans and the big dogs, this is where y'all are going to be living. Here's what your neighborhood's going to be. When we've talked about that $20 million that you're allowed to pay players, we said from the very beginning that the language has been roughly 20 million, about 20 million. You know what I read today? In 3 years, they think it's going to be at 25 million already, because it's based, get ready, on the average of a power school's revenue stream. Think about that for a second. They're going to take the power schools, just all of them, and they're going to average out the revenue being created. So if you're Texas, Ohio State, A&M, USC, name the ones you think are revenue creators, they're going to help that average come up. So, Cody, it's always going to be in flux. It's going to be like an NFL salary cap, but you know the NFL well enough to know. When's the last time the NFL salary cap went down? Like, I don't remember it.
I don't know if it ever has, to be honest with you. Actually, it might have like 15 years ago when they had their little situation, but I don't think it has. And yeah,
right. It's gonna keep going up, so that when Texas and A&M and the successful revenue dogs at the top make their big money, and the SEC splits all that money, and the Big Ten is splitting all their money, everything, it's the rising tide, lifts all boats. Everything's gonna go up, and not to say that Northwestern or Michigan State or whatever, Kansas, is gonna be able to pay the 25 million, but they can. And if they can, Georgia and Bama and Texas will be able to and will do it. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is we're headed towards this like movable revenue cap thing. It's going to change year in and year out, and you're going to be able to pay even more to these players over time. So Cody, we're headed towards the new day, and we just want to kind of keep people updated. I'm trying to get it all to sit in my head. I feel like it's going to.
It's a lot to digest when you're talking about salaries and contracts and monies from this angle, and all the schools having different amounts. It's a whole kind of puts you in a little bit of a mind tizzy as you digest it.
Absolutely. Phil points out women's track could add a lot of scholarships. That's certainly a possibility. By the way,
gymnastics is a big SEC sport.
Gymnastics, you're right. Huge in the SEC. And that's something Texas doesn't have, correct?
Correct.
There's no gymnastics program. Texas may want to get on board there. Get in there with the Georgia Gym Dogs and LSU. And hell, OU is a badass gymnastics program. OU's really good at gymnastics. So maybe you get in on that. Speaking of women's sports, Cody, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about WNBA, the energy they have, and the crowds and revenue. To that point, did you see the deal they just worked for their TV moving forward?
What were the numbers? Because I saw something come across, but I'm going to be honest with you, dude. Sometimes I just don't. I don't read when I.
Well, the projection is it's about to
read when I see basketball stuff. Sometimes I just zoom right past it.
I think it's Disney and ESPN and stuff are involved. But if I'm reading it right, it goes from like a $60 million a year deal to 220 for them.
Ugh.
That's incredible.
Well,
but on the personal side, I also saw this out of softball. There's a badass pitcher out at Stanford.
I saw this.
You see this? She's transferring to Texas Tech. And the report is a 7-figure NIL deal for her. You want to know why you might move to Lubbock? What if they gave you $1 million to move to Lubbock?
I don't mean this to come off in any direction other than, is softball making schools that much money? There's no way. There's no way that everyone knows football is the money-making sport, but $1 million deal?
I know. It's all about, I mean, I guess it's all about, you assume they would have done all the math on the boosters.
She's the player
the
of the year,
support,
though, right? So
who's willing to play. She's a badass. And she's a starting pitcher, in case I didn't say that part. Yeah, I mean, she is the most.
AKA, they pitch every day.
Right. It is theoretically, when you're good at it, when you're a Cat Osterman type, Jenny Finch, whoever you want to mention, you are as dominant as anything in sports. To me, in a team sport, that's the most dominant tool you can use in a team sport, and they feel like they're going to pay for it. But that was wild to hear. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of possibilities out there. There's a lot of angles out there, and you've got, you got that going on in the NIL world, in softball. Who knows where it could end up when you're talking about, football. So keep your eyes on that story. 105 scholarships is apparently on the way. All right. Speaking of on the way, we got buy or sell on the way. I got all kinds. It was some really good football birthdays. So I'm going to throw some of those at Cody today and hit him with some different angles and see what we've got there. Also, we want to get you, thirsty is what we want to get you. I'm all about making you hungry and thirsty. This one's the thirsty part. How about a little Deep Eddy vodka? The tasting room is out there in Dripping Springs. I'm trying to make a plan to get out there before the season starts, because it's always a great way to kind of round out the summer for me. Get on out there with some friends and hit some Deep Eddy vodka. I love those cocktails up in the upper right. That one on the far right, that's my favorite. The kind of margarita on the rocks vibe. They use the lime Deep Eddy vodka, make an incredible cocktail there. I also love the Dreamsicle. Don't forget about that. Tell them to make you a Dreamsicle if you go out there. That is the Deep Eddy orange vodka and cream soda, and it will make you think of being a kid if you're, if you're a Dreamsicle kind of kid and you love that orange vanilla combo. Yeah, it's fantastic. Thursday and Friday, 11 to 7, they're ready for you. Saturday, 11 to 5, Sunday, 12 to 5. Don't forget the Crimson Creek Smokehouse Barbecue right there on site. The food truck is right next to the building at the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. You order on your phone. They let you know when it's ready. You just walk right up to the front bar area, and there's your food, and you just tear it up and have a great time. Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. And you can also grab a couple of bottles of that Deep Eddy Vodka if you need to get stocked up. Shout out to Deep Eddy Vodka for being a great partner of ours, and they are whipping up an OB cocktail as soon as it's done. Maybe it'll be done by the time I get out there for the season. I'm going to find out about that pretty soon. So keep your ears peeled for that. All right. Let's see. So somebody threw in on the chat, is Tech softball any good? And
I was just going to say I looked this up just a second ago, and the quick math that went through my head was Tech was bottom 3, 29-21 last year in softball, 8-16 in the Big 12. And of course, those two big dogs who finished first and second in the Big 12 last year, Texas and Oklahoma, are now gone. So now there's an opportunity to potentially vault yourself up into that conversation to be the best team in softball in the conference.
Yeah,
Oklahoma State looked like they were pretty good last year. And now you got the Queen Bee from Stanford, who was a top 10 team last year that made the Final Four, made the Final Four of the college softball World Series. So they see an opportunity and they're jumping at it.
Yeah, Chad says, is that girl a grad transfer? Because if not, why give up a chance for a Stanford diploma for a Tech one? Chad, I would assume it is a grad transfer. I haven't checked that part. The other thing would be, think about Stanford's change too. Stanford, like the proud Pac-12 conference, Pac-12 before that, Pac-10, Pac-8, whatever. That softball is, they own a lot of national titles when you look at that conference top to bottom, and now they're all breaking up, and a group of them are headed to the Big 12 and Big 10, and we all know all that stuff. Stanford's going to the ACC. Maybe she don't want to be a part of that ACC. Maybe the idea of going with Cal and SMU to the ACC and going all the way across country does not appeal to her as much as, hey, wait a minute, let me go. I'll go hang in Lubbock. I still get to play Arizona State, Utah, Colorado, I get to, You'll certainly get a new perspective in Lubbock. Everybody that's been there knows that. If that's one, Lubbock will provide you with that before anything else. I've been to both.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say the big thing Chad also added in there was also she clearly doesn't care about winning. And I think she is winning. That's the thing here. She is winning, and that's what
she is winning.
She's going to bring. She's going to bring to Tech, and she's going to be the winner. That
And there's also that discussion about not just the $1 million NIL if it's real, but making $1 million stretch in Lubbock, Texas. A little different than making it stretch in Palo Alto, California. Now, I will say, Cody, I've been on both of those campuses, and it's not close at all. At all. Whatever you're thinking about, it is not close. Now, that's not I'm not trying to do that as a joke against Tech alone. Stanford makes a lot of places look bad. So that's another thing. No matter where she goes, the campus will disappoint her. The atmosphere will disappoint her. The weather will disappoint her if she goes anywhere, pretty much, because that place is legendary. But hey, whatever she needs to do.
Chad's on a heater in the chat. The travel for all non-football sports is going to be a nightmare for those athletes and coaches. Here's the thing, Chad. I don't know if Texas Tech has a $1 million budget for travel for softball, but I tell you who does, and that's her. She has $1 million budget now. That maybe she just travels by herself. I would get if I was playing softball and I had $1 million deal, Chad. Will they play 50 games, probably half on the road? I would have myself a Sprinter van. That'd be my first purchase, and I would travel by myself in a Sprinter van.
Yeah, there's John saying, I hope she likes dust storms. She'll get that. She will get that. Yeah, weather-wise, my God, going from what Palo Alto gives you day in and day out to what Lubbock delivers day in and day out, that is distinct. Man, that is going to be wild.
Pay up for it.
Speaking of the miles, Cody, since Chad brought it up, I saw an interview with Lincoln Riley from Big Ten Media Days. They threw up 3 teams that are joining the Big Ten and the miles they'll have to travel, the miles, the flights. USC is at like 16,000, 18,000, something like that. But the worst is UCLA, I think it is, that will travel over 22,000 miles this year. And that's the football team. That's just so to Chad's point, what is it going to be like for the UCLA softball team, the USC, volleyball team, the whoever you want to pick? That's just going to be wild. The Stanford, we just talked about the Stanford softball team that this girl is leaving. All those trips they've got to deal with in the ACC. The only thing close to them is Cal. That one's easy. Get on a bus to go to Cal. But everything else, heck, the SMU trip is silly, going all the way to Dallas.
Do you think maybe it gets better? Because having the Pac-12, having everybody over there, I don't know what the situation is for those lower tier sports. And I don't mean that in any way other than the fact that they don't make as much money as football is. Do you think that these schools all fly? I don't know. I don't have a clue. Do you think the volleyballs and softballs of the world, do you think they fly to all these events when they're conference, like,
I would assume
Stanford, UCLA, like, are they driving? Are they busing, or you think they're flying?
I'm assuming flights for the big, like for the what we would consider kind of the top tier women's sports, non-revenue sports. I'm thinking that kind of top level is that in my mind they're flying. Whether it's volleyball, women's hoops, track and field, both sides. I'm assuming they're on planes.
Okay,
maybe I'm wrong.
I was gonna say because maybe if they are busing generally in the Pac-12, now you're flying across the country, you get to fly. That might make it better. I get that it's long, true. but the 20 plus thousand mileage thing. I think I saw that with Cal too. I think Cal's on that list with 20 plus thousand. But that is ridiculous. That is every week you're gonna be like, man, we got to go to Rutgers.
Yeah,
we got to go to New Jersey and back home by Monday for class.
Yeah, that ain't your granddaddy's Big Ten right there. Not at all. Yeah, I mean, like not Stanford, UCLA at Maryland for a conference series, like softball. That's going to happen at some point. That's crazy.
That's
I mean,
brutal.
that's just amazing how much you have to travel. All right. Thanks to everybody for jumping in the Specs chat. We said we had a little reminder for you. We've already announced it, but let's remind you again. The new expanded schedule gets started next week. Everything you enjoy in the morning and midday going to stay the same. Overreaction and old fashioned. We'll have House Divided for you at high noon. But we know you all have things to do. You have days to get through. You got kids to take care of and pick up. Get all that done and then get ready for some football with friends. It is not a wrestling federation. It is a badass football show. Alex Dunlap, Cody Carpentier. Cody, how excited are you for a little FWF starting next week?
Extremely excited because I already do shows with Alex, as people probably know of our roster watch, but I mean, getting to sit down every single day, we're going to get to talk to the deep dig every single week, like Alex got to do last year by himself. But now I get to sit there and I get to heckle him. I get to ask him all the questions that I know people want to ask from the chat because I spent my days in the chat. And I'm just excited to get to talk football every single day with my brother and give the people what they want, give them some good content and talk all things Longhorns, talk about all these, players that have become prospects, talk about the games, talk about the teams that they're going to be playing, just covering everything we possibly can. So I'm excited for Football with Friends this fall.
There it is, 6 o'clock every day for you as we expand the schedule out. And somewhere in here, I don't know, I guess this is still legit. I guess the merch is still there. You want to get some merch ahead of time? Get some FWF merch? There we go. We'll see if we can get that going. I need to add the FWF hat up here to the Hall of Helmets. We'll get that done at some point. Football with Friends, 6 o'clock on Monday. Get ready for that. Check it out. All right, Cody, are you ready for a little buy or sell here on this Thursday?
I was born ready, brother.
He was born ready. You want to go first or second today?
I'll go first.
You want to go first? All right, hit it.
All right. Buy or sell number one. The Deshaun Foster flop at Big Ten Media Days was awkward, but he will eventually be the coach that brings UCLA back to a 10-win season for the first time since 2014.
Whew. I will sell, not just because of the fail there. He could have been incredible there. It's still going to be a really tough thing to pull off going into that conference. We just talked about the travel, but I'm not convinced that UCLA is going to immediately get back to 10 wins. And then, Cody, I know it's a small little thing, but when you look that out of your element, just doing something so basic that a coach has to do, I got questions about the rest of it, so I can't be thinking 10 wins just yet. I'll sell.
Can I share my screen for just 1 second? I got to show you this
Sure.
picture of Big Ten Media Days.
Okay.
Let me find it quick. I tweeted it out this morning here. Share screen. Probably should have prepared that. Here it is right here. All right. This is where this guy was standing. All right.
Whoa.
This is what I tweeted. I said, I don't think this was the purpose of a stadium. Not sure, though. Lucas Oil Stadium is 1.8 million square feet. That field turf just by itself is 95,000 square feet. Plus you have, it probably goes up 200 feet in the air. The SEC last week where we were at that ballroom, Chad, was 31,000 square feet.
Wow.
31,000 square feet in comparison to this, which is in whole 1.8 million square feet.
Yeah. And look, I've done Big 12 Media Days multiple years at Jerry World, so it's effectively the same thing. You're on an NFL field, but it didn't look that spread out.
But it's like, think about it from that coach's perspective. Think about what we went and saw at SEC Media Days. And the reason I brought that up was more so to say, look what that guy had to deal with. That guy was standing in the end zone looking at 100 media members that were 20 yards away from him. Right. And yeah, he wasn't prepared, but also like, that's just not a winnable situation. That SEC one, where these guys are in a ballroom, it's more of a tight-knit crew. Like those coaches, those SEC coaches dominated. And I didn't watch all of the Big Ten coaches, but I just felt bad for the guy. Like he just was like, it's almost like you just like stand up there, you're like, hey,
I did
what's
too.
up?
And it's terrible. And of all those teams, if the Maryland coach gets up there and does it, it's one thing. If the Northwestern coach gets up there and does it, maybe we don't notice. When you have Los Angeles in your name, it's UCLA. That's where Troy Aikman went to college, for God's sakes. Like, you're kind of a big deal, and you need to sound a lot better than that. I don't care if there was 2 people. I don't care if there was 50. I don't care if he's in a bar. I mean, Cody, his job is to figure out how to communicate in different situations. Sometimes the kid's eating lunch. Sometimes the kid's in a class. Sometimes the kid's in a living room. Sometimes grandma's cooking in the kitchen and screaming while you're trying to make your point to the kid. There's a lot of versions of it. And I would have assumed Deshaun Foster has been involved in more of those up to this point. But maybe I'm wrong.
I would have assumed. I mean, I looked him up right directly on YouTube to see if he did any other interviews, and he's done other interviews, and he's done just fine. His personality is just not that of a Kirby or someone that's going to go up there, like Sark is going to go up there and just dominate that situation. But I felt bad for him. So buy or sell number 2, you saw the picture of Mike Norvell's press conference at the La Quinta Inn in a hotel room, and that would not fly if they were in the SEC.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I'm just seeing this right now. They interviewed Mike Norvell in a La Quinta off I-10. That's funny. Oh, whoa. Yeah, bye. That would not fly. Absolutely. That's not going to fly in the SEC, because when they say it just means more, it does not mean more janky hotel rooms. No, that's not what it means. Good grief. Did they knock on the door and say it was housekeeping?
I think that was
interrupted him.
You know, like the little situation, the little area that Anwar got to go, because you only got one media member from each crew to got to go talk to Sark.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, I got to know a password. You got to walk on. This was one where it was like, hey, we're going to be at the La Quinta Inn off 33rd Street on I-10. Come to room 12, knock on the door, say Seminoles. And it's like, you get let into this room right here, and you're like,
the code word is Seminoles. Everybody bring their ice bucket. Just go ahead and bring that in. Yeah, that's terrible. That is terrible.
All right. Buy or sell number 3. Ole Miss versus Missouri is more likely than Georgia versus Texas in the SEC championship game.
Oh, interesting. Ole Miss versus Missouri.
Take into account the schedules, because this is exactly why this conversation comes up. Because Georgia's got a pretty tough schedule. Texas, I mean, you could say it's pretty decent in conference, but you still get Michigan, you still get Oklahoma, A&M, Georgia. But when you look at that Missouri Ole Miss thing, it's like
Missouri Ole Miss better chance than Texas and Georgia. Yeah, based on schedules, I'll go ahead and buy, because remember, the other team in the conference, I pointed this out yesterday when looking at all the numbers. Texas only has to play one of the top 7 as picked by the media. Missouri only has to play one of those top 7 as well. And Ole Miss is getting an easier road than they've had. They have not. They're getting a little bit of an easier path. What is the Ole Miss number this year? I know I have it here somewhere. Yeah, Ole Miss goes from playing 3 11-win teams to 1 in terms of their regular season schedule. They've really been stacked up with a lot of tough stuff in that Western division. It's a little easier for them. So, yeah, I'll buy your idea on that. I am watching those 2 teams. How does Dart perform in Kiffin's offense? And then I don't think enough people are talking about Brady Cook, especially with those receivers he's got. We already know Burton's great, and now you're adding Theo Weiss that was at OU. I think that Missouri team is really dangerous. Missouri at A&M, October 5th, is a game that I'm interested in, not just because I follow A&M closely. It's because of Missouri, Cody. They could come into that game, should come into that game 4-0. If they get by the Aggies and win in College Station and they're 5-0, you want to talk about some momentum for a season. Missouri's going to be rolling at that point.
You heard it here first. Chad says Ole Miss, Missouri in the SEC championship.
There it is. Right. There it is.
Buy or sell number 4. Connor Weigman with a +2.5 handicap will start more games in 2024 than Quinn Ewers.
So I get +2.5. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
A +2.5 will start more games than Quinn Ewers in 2024. A +2.5. I mean, I feel like that's a sell. I have to sell it if it's going to be equal. If I feel it's going to be equal, I sell that, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't I do that?
I think so.
I feel like they're both the guy, and I think it's going to be about equal for the number of starts. At least I hope it is.
They both play full seasons. Well, yeah, if they both play full seasons, then you would buy it because you're buying Weigman with the +2.5. You would get.
Because I get the +2.5. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not okay. Yeah. So I'll buy that because if I get the +2.5, I'll buy. But I'm going to say they both stay healthy. Crossing my fingers. Come on. The show's called House Divided. I have to love both sides because I want them to get there in November and have a badass.
That's why I put the half in there because I didn't want that to happen. But hey, we're there. All right,
I'm sorry.
this one is
totally screwed up your idea.
That's all right. This one's gonna be. This one might be. This is a little more. This is a little more maniacal.
Okay.
Chad Hastings, as a Texas A&M alum, you could digest a 30-point home loss against Texas if it means you get a college football playoff berth a week later.
Whew. Yeah, bye. I get into this playoff, which is actually real.
Yep.
Yeah, where do I sign? If you're gonna if you're telling me the Aggies are gonna be in that, then that means they have a chance to go. That means they have a chance to go win it all, and we all know what the year is when they last did that. I've watched the Aggies lose by 30, and if you're telling me that instead of just having to deal with it and do what I normally do, which is just eat and drink way too much, you're telling me I get to go watch a playoff game after that? Yeah, I'll take that. I will absolutely take that. But it's funny because you're that was you yesterday. That's right. You were the one yesterday that put a 30-point Texas win out into the universe. You really think that game ends up like that?
No. I just have to ask a question because I think I asked it to Catch in his 10 thoughts last week, one of the buy or sell questions, and I said you would take a 30-point loss to Oklahoma if it meant you got to go to the national championship. That's what I asked Catch.
Oh yeah, you got to take that, especially when you just upped it to another level. National championship, you're in that game.
Well, I had to go off of expectations, right? The expectations for Texas and Texas A&M are a little bit different levels, so I had to bring yours down to
That's fair. That is fair. The Aggies have to prove that they are in that different discussion, and they feel like they're a long way from that right now. All right, was that your 5? You good?
Yes, sir. That was number 5.
All right, here we go with a little buy or sell. We'll start with Texas football. Back around to the pool party. Buy or sell number 1, a class of 25 guy that attends the pool party will commit to Texas by end of the day, Monday.
I gotta sell.
Okay.
I gotta sell. Because I don't think Jonah Williams put his date for a couple weeks from now. I think Terry has a date out there, but I don't think it's next week. I'm gonna sell.
I think you're probably right, and that's the thing where we always try to be as honest as we can with the fans, try not to blow too much smoke. When we think about, there's just not a lot of energy out there today for, hey, this guy could commit. It could be today. It could be this afternoon. And we're going to tell you before we stop the show today about go check out orangebloods.com. There's going to be a full thread on the pool party today. But in terms of an absolute, there's a guy that's going to commit and it's going to blow your mind. That's not something we can absolutely tell you is being talked about right now. So we will see though. All right, let's hit some birthdays here, Cody. And it is football oriented for these next 3. And we'll start with the Wayback Machine. Buy or sell number 2, Walter Payton would have been 71 years old today. Rest in peace to one of the best running backs ever. You can tell me where he went to college. It's a good, goofy trivia question.
Golly. It's going to sound like I don't know who Walter Payton is, but obviously I do.
Of course. But
college though. I mean, everything probably post the 80s, I could probably tell you, but Walter Payton, I'm just going to shoot one in the dark here. And I'm just going to go with like I don't know what, something keeps telling me Arkansas, but that's not right. What is it? It
is not. Here's my hint. My hint is Deion Sanders has coached there.
No, Jackson State.
There it is. There you go.
Yeah, I was right in the area. I knew it was in the South somewhere.
Two of the best small school guys ever. Walter Payton went to Jackson State. Jerry Rice went to Mississippi Valley State.
I knew that one. If you would ask me that one, I would have had it, but
those are
wrong
two
birthday.
of the great ones. Rest in peace to Walter. That is the greatest running back I have ever seen, that I've ever actually seen play. Walter Payton is, I think, the best I've ever seen. Speaking of running backs, let's get a little more modern here, Cody, because it's also Alvin Kamara's birthday. He's 29. As a fantasy owner, he is outside of your top 10 overall players right now.
100%. Yeah. He's just too old. The situation looked like it was going to, we could get into the nuance of it, but that situation looked like it was going to be more toward Kendre Miller this year, the second year back out of TCU.
Mm-hmm.
And Kendre Miller can't stay off the medical table. So Alvin Kamara is actually going to be a pretty good value. If you go over to the shameless plug here, if you go over to the Roster Watch Ultimate Draft cheat sheets at rosterwatch.com, we have Kamara right around player number like 35 to 31. So he's right in that area. So outside the top 10.
There you go. All right. Buy or sell number 4. Let's go to the young guys in the NFL. Bryce Young is 23 years old today. You think Carolina will improve on last year and get 6 or more wins?
Happy birthday, Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young still. I didn't love him last year in context of that class. I had him as QB4.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as this year, I do think this team improves. 6 is right there with this defense. I mean, they got rid of Brian Burns. They lost arguably their best player.
Right.
It's
a wacky division.
I'm going to sell it because I don't think they can win 7.
Yeah.
I think this is like a 5 number, maybe a 6.
Not quite.
So I'm going to sell it.
Okay.
They
By
improve,
the way, I'd forgotten this, Cody. Do you know who their new offensive coordinator is in Carolina? I'd forgotten that this happened.
Well, they got Canales as the coach.
I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. The new head coach. Yes. That's what I meant. The new head coach is Canales, who was the OC at Tampa.
Yeah. And help Baker, and also was the quarterback coach in Seattle and helped Geno. So this could be a third consecutive move where he elevates that quarterback. So, and Bryce is the talent. Baker's pretty talented, but Bryce is more talented. So arguably the most talented of the 3. And could take another big step.
And speaking of Baker, a guy named Liam Cohen is the new OC in Tampa. He was at Kentucky. He was with the Rams for a year with McVay. He will be trying to dial up Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and that Bucs offense now. Weirdest division on earth in the NFL, that NFC South. Happy birthday to Bryce Young today. And finally, Cody, let's see just how old I am. Buy or sell number 5, 44 years ago. The movie Caddyshack was released. You have seen it, and you can give me a line from it.
I can't give you a line, but I have seen it. But it's been a minute.
You have seen it.
I have seen it. Good. I'm not too aged. Bill Murray. I'm in Charleston right now. That's where I live now. I moved about 2 months ago. But Bill Murray actually, rumor is you can find him walking around the streets of Charleston, and he does own our minor league baseball team, the Charleston River Dogs. So shout out Bill Murray.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Yes. All the Caddyshack fans, go watch the movie today. 44 years ago in 1980, it was released. Big fan of Caddyshack myself. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Bonus. I got a bonus for you.
Okay.
Texas needs to add a women's sport. Buy or sell. Women's wrestling is a sport. That's a new one that's kind of caught traction. I know it's like in the Midwest, they have it at a lot of schools, Big Ten and stuff. Women's wrestling. They don't even have men's wrestling right now.
Based on what we said earlier, I'm going to sell and go gymnastics. Nothing against wrestling. I think at some point, maybe they can get to that point. But I like the idea, especially with the NIL possibilities that we've already seen with LSU athletes and Georgia athletes. I mentioned Oklahoma. Your big, one of the big rivals for Texas walks into the SEC as a I guess they're a gymnastics power. I know they're damn good. I don't know if they'd be considered a power or not. I think they've won a natty in the last couple of years, though. So I'd go that route. I'd love to see Texas get into that world and see if they could actually compete in gymnastics, because it's something that they've never really had. But I like your wrestling idea.
I just think it's interesting because they don't have a men's wrestling team. And like, I don't know, I grew up in the Midwest, so I had to navigate that one in there because I'm used to Minnesota, Iowa, Penn State,
Right.
Oklahoma State's also in there. Like, and if Texas had the women's wrestling team come first, it would be an interesting dynamic to have, potentially down the road, they get a men's wrestling team and the women are actually the ones that lead the way. I just thought that would have been an interesting dynamic to think
That would
through.
be cool. Yeah, no, it's a good point. We'll keep our eyes on that one. See if Texas ends up adding women's sports to deal with all this added, scholarship numbers that we were talking about. Speaking of numbers, Texas would love to add some commitment numbers at the pool party. Doesn't feel like they may do that, but who knows? Let's show you the list one more time. Big name right at the top is Jonah Williams. That's the one you want, probably above all else, Longhorn fans. If you could get that commit from the big time 5-star safety, you take it. Michael Terry's name is also one we've discussed, and you also have some guys that are already committed to you. 5 of them on this list that are also coming in, including the quarterback Dia Bell. Also, in terms of time frame, here's what they released in terms of a time. This got out 2 to 5 p.m. Shout out to the graphics department over there at UT for the Bevo and the sunglasses. It's well done. Well done. 2 to 5 Central Time was that estimate. So as we get ready to close up here about 1:20 or so, head on over to orangebloods.com. There will be a thread on that to follow throughout the afternoon. Even though Jeff Ketchum's taking a vacation from Orange Bloods Live, he's working hard at orangebloods.com. He and the rest of the crew getting it all set up for you. So follow along over there. And tonight, it's a Thursday, War Room, always on a Thursday night. Tonight, it's going to be a special War Room chat. 24 hours of a War Room chat. Last time it was done that way, I think it started about 7 o'clock. I'm going to go see Deadpool at 8:30. So at about 11:30 or midnight, I'll have a no spoilers review of Deadpool in the chat. So you're going to want to jump in for that. That's my incredible contribution. And then the guys are going to bring you the Longhorn stuff that you want coming off of the pool party. So get to orangebloods.com, get signed up. Today's your day. Get ready for the season. What are we? 37 days away from game 1 and 128 days until House Divided gets back together if they don't reschedule. So go to orangebloods.com, get signed up today so you can follow along with all of it. And check out rosterwatch.com, like Cody was talking about, all the great work that he and Alex and that crew are doing as well, getting you ready for the season. Cody, I appreciate the time. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, including other shows today. You are a hardworking man, sir. I appreciate your time. Remember, football with friends. It is fun as hell, and it comes back next week at 6. Let's throw up that graphic one more time. Tyler and the crew took the time to make that graphic, so we're going to show it to you. 6 o'clock, football with friends. Circle it on your calendar, or what do? Just get notifications. Then it's done for you. Like, subscribe, get those notifications. We appreciate you. John, this is not going to be a new sport at Texas. I don't think women's breakdancing is it is in the Olympics, though. It is in the Olympics to check out breakdancing. You can definitely check that out.
Onwalk could probably be the head coach.
He could. You know what, Salty Q? Be careful. If you try to get into the meat judging,
hey,
A&M's damn good at the meat judging. Be careful. Careful. We're really good at it. Really good at A&M at the meat judging. Yeah, that's a real thing. All right. Thank you again for liking, subscribing, getting your notifications. Cody Carpentier, nice enough to sit in. Tomorrow, the other half of Football with Friends, Alex Dunlap, will join me for House Divided and wrap up the week on a Friday. Until Friday at noon, y'all have a good one. Take care. Cross your fingers that somebody commits at that pool party. We are House Divided.